So what does Georgia have to get accomplished this spring? Dean Legge, Matt DeBary, another edition of Riding Home. Matt, Georgia's coming into this season with a big game against Clemson. That's about 6 months away, but spring ball is here right now. What do they have to do? I mean, like, that's the sort of basic question. What has to happen?
Well, I think the two big question marks on the team, first on offense, is the offensive line. I think they're going to have to figure out what five best guys work. That's what Matt Luke told us, I guess, a couple weeks ago. They're just trying to find the five best guys. So offensively, that's where I would start. One of the big things I'm looking for this spring. Defensively, it's the two cornerbacks. Who's going to replace Eric Stokes and Tyson Campbell? I guess Keely Ringo should be the guy, but we haven't seen him play. He didn't play at all last year, so he's still a question mark as good as he is. I mean, one of the top players in the country in his class in 2020. The talent is there. We just have to see him on the field. And Jalen Kimber, another guy from the 2020 class, four-star kid. This is his second year. I think he has a big opportunity in front of him. So figuring out the cornerback spots, the star, the other safety, I think there's some big question marks in the secondary. So just want to see guys step up there and along the offensive line. If someone steps up at left tackle, maybe moves Jomari Sawyer inside at left guard. But other than that, I think there's a lot of positives going into the spring. But that's really what I'm looking at.
Yeah, the big thing on the offensive line, you've got so many options there. I mean, that's the big thing. Jamari, Justin Schaefer's back. Erickson was mentioned a lot, wasn't he? A couple of weeks
At
ago.
least three times.
Yeah, several times. You got Webb, Truss, McClendon. I mean, Truss and McClendon both starting at tackle for that Cincinnati game, wasn't it? And then you've got Jones, Ratledge, Lindbergh, Van Pran, Willock, Blasky, Kenny, Mims, Morris, Fairchild, Wilson. They got plenty of guys, man. I mean, the question is, who starts where? I think that's the biggest. So you think figuring out left tackle is the biggest thing?
And center, but I think there's plenty of options at center. I think whoever wins that job beats some really high caliber guys, and I think whoever wins that job should have a pretty good year. But you've got JT Daniels, who could make a Heisman run. He's trying to do what the previous quarterbacks did: Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones. For him to have his best year, you need the left tackle spot secured. And
But is it
Jamari
Mims?
was fine there. I don't think a true freshman is going to be the best option, as good as he is. I mean, you went out and got Xavier Truss from Rhode Island for a reason. You went up and got Devin Willock from New Jersey, I believe it was, for a reason. There's something that they like about those guys. It would be a little disappointing to see Amarius, as good as he is and as big as he is, to beat some older veteran guys like that, especially at left tackle, which is so important.
Here's my question, man, because the Cincinnati game was one of the few games you got to see live. Do you remember Truss kind of got beat up? Was the whole game him not playing well, or did it get together at the end? What can you remember from that whole thing? I mean,
It wasn't.
they started for him for a reason.
Yeah, I don't think he looked great in pass protection. I thought they got to JT a little bit, and Jamari didn't have his best game either. So I think multiple guys struggled, especially early on. But he had the lead block on the Zamir White touchdown around the end. They kind of ran right behind him, and he held his block there long enough for them to get the score. So I think he improved as the game went on, and the guy's massive. He can be a mauler in the run game, but it's, can he defend against, these Alabama pass rushers and, these defenses, again, some of the guys against Clemson? Can they find a left tackle who can secure the edge and block Miles Murphy, who's going to be coming, and other high caliber SEC edge defenders? So Jamari proved that he could do it, but he's not a first round left tackle type of guy. I still think he's better suited to play left guard, where he possibly could be a first round pick next year, because that's where I just think he's better suited. So figuring out that left tackle spot is going to be important.
But the thing about it is, man, you've got Jamari. Here's who you can put at left tackle if you really want to. And these are guys that it would make sense if they went and played at left tackle. Jamari, Tate Ratledge, Broderick Jones, Marius Mims. So they got four guys that maybe could do it. Am I leaving someone out, or what about Morris? I don't think Morris. I mean, doesn't look
No,
like a
I
left
think
tackle.
he's a guard. I
Yeah.
think Tate Ratledge is more of a guard. I just think that's where he'll be able to play a little sooner,
Well,
because I
Broderick,
think
Broderick
Broderick's a
certainly.
tackle.
Yeah.
Broderick's a tackle. He's not moving inside, but I think Tate is a guy who could move inside. And Amarius will be your left tackle, I think, eventually. But I think they might be in a little bit of trouble if he wins the job over guys who have been in the program for years now
So
at
you
that
think it
left.
should be Truss, or you think it should be Jamari?
I think it should be. I mean, Matt Luke, we'll see how good of a coach he is. Xavier was the guy he thought should be playing left tackle in the Peach Bowl. So he should be the guy entering the spring. So if Xavier Truss hasn't developed and asserted himself as the guy now and gotten better since he's been on campus, then I think a lot of that has to go back to coaching then, because he definitely has the size to do it. If he's not ready in his third year and he's on the verge of being passed up by Amari Sims or a younger guy, then it's how, is he really just not that good, or is, he wasn't being coached up properly. So I think it could be a mixture of both.
Well, I think the big, as we get into these details here, I don't know who the center will be, but you got options at center for sure, right?
Yeah.
And everybody else is probably a guard, generally speaking. But the people he kept talking about were Erickson, Jamari, and Schaefer. Was that the other one that he talked about constantly? I'm trying to.
It was the three veterans. I
Yeah,
think
so
it was Schaefer.
Yeah, Erickson, Schaefer, and Jamari. They got 18 offensive linemen on scholarship. That's a lot. That's where you want to be. And you've got young, so, I mean, could McClendon be your left tackle?
I think they just like him better at right. I think he's a better, against the run than he is against the pass. So I think they're just fine there at right tackle. If he continues to improve and develop, I think they're pretty safe there. But at center, I do think Warren Erickson is an option. This is a guy that I think a lot of fans don't know about. This is not a guy who's been in the program for 2 years now and learning. This is his fourth year in the program. He's a guy who is going to bring leadership and a veteran presence. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he won one of the.
He's gotten to play better than he did if I'm not mistaken, in the Peach Bowl. He's got to play better than he did there. Am I wrong on that part?
You're not wrong there. Again, I think a few of the offensive linemen had bad days, but he's got a whole spring and offseason to learn and get better. But I don't think Georgia's going to be going up against some of the best defensive lines in all of college football. Clemson's is going to be very tough. If they play against Alabama, they're going to be very tough. I don't know how good Florida's defensive line is or Auburn's. I don't think any of those units are going to scare Georgia, but every once in a while there's going to be a week where they go up against Arkansas or Mississippi State and they stop the run. That's their main job. And I think Georgia offense, on the offensive line just has to be a little more consistent. You can't have 3 or 4 games where you just can't run the football and you're able to run it over everyone else. They have to be able to do it both. And
which games are you talking about? Are you talking about the Mississippi State game and Cincinnati?
First half of Arkansas, they couldn't run the ball. Mississippi State, they couldn't run it at all. In the Peach Bowl, they had trouble running the ball. And I think a lot of that was defensive scheme because they ran over almost everyone else. They ran on Alabama and Florida and then decided not to run the ball. So they were very successful on the ground. But when you do have teams who are trying to stack the box and say, okay, you're not running it on us because you're going to have to run through 7 or 8 guys, they still need to be able to still get 4 and 5 yards here and not just 1 or 2 yards and have JT Daniels have to win you the game with his arm. That's not an ideal position. He might be able to, but you still have to have that balance.
Okay, on the defensive side of first of all, we're going to talk about the weaknesses. We'll get to the strengths in a second here, but on the defensive side of the ball, it's really corner. It's not so much DB. It's really corner specifically. That's the issue.
Yeah, especially when they're playing in a dime or a nickel and you have more DBs back there.
Right.
You're going to need a lot of guys to step up. Lewis Seen is the kind of the veteran now. Chris Smith will be in his 4th year, but he hasn't played as much because he only came in for Richard LeCount.
5th year, is it not?
He was in the 18 class, so this is his 4th year. And I thought he played well, especially against the run in the Peach Bowl and towards the end of the year with Richard out. But they've got talented corners, but I don't think they're going to be as good as Eric Stokes and Tyson Campbell were, guys who I think aren't going to make it past the second, round. So those are big shoes to fill, and you're expecting one guy, Keely Ringo, who hasn't played yet, to step in. I do think that it's not an ideal spot to be in. You have to replace Tyreek Stevenson as well. And, we're seeing the transfer of Devod Wilson. That hurts right now. The transfer of Tyreek hurts right now. 2 guys left for the draft. So there's plenty of holes in the secondary, a lot of talent. But that's where this spring, I think we're going to see Kirby working really, really closely with that DB group.
Yeah, it's like at offensive line, you've got a lot of guys. You've got 13 DBs by my count. You've got 13 DBs, and they're not all corners. I mean, you're not going to have Chris Smith playing corner.
Right.
So, but Chris Smith, Brini, and Lewis Seen all had good end of the years. I think you're okay at safety, generally speaking, but you want to be good. You want to be good at corner, and particularly like when you're talking about a Clemson team that's going to be throwing it. You think you're talking about an Alabama team that seems to be interested in throwing it, and obviously Florida that will be predicated. Well, in the past, it's been predicated on throwing it at Florida. So you got to be good at DB. You can get away with not being great at DB so long as your front seven is pretty good, and this is a pretty good front seven.
Yeah, it's maybe the best front seven that we've seen at Georgia so far, and there's a lot of guys who still need to step up, like Nolan Smith, and we saw a dip from Trayvon Walker from his freshman year to his sophomore year. There's a lot of guys who need big years if they want to be 3-and-out guys and be like Aziz and go 3-and-out and be in the first round. So I think there's a lot of guys in the front seven who are hungry for this season to have a big year.
There's older guys in this group too, man, that have sort of, if you want to call it, waited their turn. Anderson, Walker, Tyndall. Those guys started playing more and more as the season went on. Now, obviously, the return of Devontae and Jordan Davis is as big as it gets.
Yeah, I do think Jordan Davis is a first-rounder and would have been probably picked in the top 3 rounds if he would have decided to enter the draft. He came back. It's going to be really, really tough to run on Georgia this year, especially with those 2 guys coming back in the middle. Jalen Carter is too good to be on the bench for long. He's going to play. Trayvon Walker in his 3rd year, one of the more athletic defensive linemen in the SEC. He's going to be playing. And then Adam Anderson, Nolan Smith off the edge. 5 stars everywhere, Dean. So
we've not even seen Mikal Sherman yet. MJ Sherman, people call him now. Who could be a steady player. I'm not saying he's going to explode on the scene. It could be a very steady player for them.
Quay Walker is in his 4th year now. Former 5-star, 4th year in the program. I think he could have a big year.
They have 3 top 100 senior linebackers. I mean, this is going to be a defense. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
Well, I think of all the 2019 guys, I think Nakobe Dean's probably the one who could be a 3-and-out first-round type of kid. If he has another big year. So they're pretty loaded there. I mean, there's not a whole lot of weakness because there's so much experience and so much talent there overall.
You also have Sori and Munden, who are going to play something. I don't know if they're going to play linebacker, but they're certainly going to play. The Georgia special teams.
I was just going to say that.
Go ahead.
When you have these talented freshmen who aren't going to be able to break, the starting lineup at linebacker, but need to play, put those guys on special teams, get them a taste of the action, and I do think a lot of those guys are going to be making plays. Less walk-ons playing on special teams, more 5-star freshmen who are just eager to make plays and see some playing time early on. And I think we could see that from Sori and Munden. I think that's a good way to look at it.
They're completely loaded up at wide receiver. I mean, now we're going to start talking about. I mean, obviously we've been talking about it for a little bit, but your wide receivers are steady to explosive. People are making the argument that the best in the conference at wide receiver. The tight ends are got a very steady Fitzpatrick, and of course you've got Darnell, the washing machine, who is.
I love that.
they really started using him a lot at the end of the season. Fitzpatrick as well. Nevertheless, you got Bowers coming in too to add to the mix. The running back, I think James Cook is the guy that maybe. I don't think he's an afterthought, but it just per touch value, James is probably going to be as hard to deal with as anybody.
Yeah, I'm assuming Zamir White leads the team in rushing because he did last year, but I think his numbers and touches overall might go down because Kendall Milton needs to get more touches. I think Kenny McIntosh has deserved more touches, and you still have to get it to James Cook. So there's a lot of talent back there. I think Kirby, remember, he told us that they still might have some transfers leaving at the end of the spring. Maybe it's one of these running backs. The only one I can think of is Kenny McIntosh. I don't think Kendall Milton's going anywhere. And James Cook and Zamir White came back for a reason, not to transfer. So
yeah, I don't think McIntosh should go. I mean, next year would be his ability to really shine. You don't.
I think he would get more touches elsewhere, and I think he's
Yeah.
good enough to be
Yeah.
a lead guy somewhere else. So just a guy, if they do have one of those backs, maybe try to take an opportunity somewhere else. I think he would be the guy, but he saved them at the end of that Peach Bowl. The guy deserves to see the ball. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, again, back to it. Zamir was a special teams guy and he's their leading rusher. So I think Kenny McIntosh is going to get a lot of opportunities in the return game, if that is in so much as it exists anymore in college football. But and then you've got quarterback where, I don't think they're returning the best quarterback in the country, but he's one of the better ones, that's for sure, and he's probably one of the better ones in the SEC.
Well, you have to be happy if you're JT Daniels because you have all the weapons you could ask for. You couldn't ask for anything more if you're JT Daniels. And if he can just work on the arm strength a little more, I don't know if that had stuff to do with his knee or whatever, but he did underthrow plenty of deep balls. And he's got Arian Smith, who it's tough to overthrow that guy. So if they can develop some chemistry deep down the field, like Mac Jones and Jalen Waddle did, and Devonta Smith, and Georgia is going to see more and more explosive plays. He can do it with Burton. We saw that against Mississippi State. But if he can, continue that chemistry with down the field with Arian Smith as well, we know what George Pickens can do down the field. But there's plenty of options where he can sling it deep down the field where they can pick up those explosive plays that Coach Monken always talks about.
Well, here's the thing, though, man, is it all goes together. And if you don't have your left tackle, you're not going to be able to as easily get it right down the field. So you do need protection for those long throws. And JT Daniels is not what you'd consider a mobile quarterback, and they're going to have to protect him. I think people should be excited about this season. The Clemson game will tell you a lot. It won't tell you what will happen for sure as the season goes on, but it'll be a good indicator as to where they are. We can't know how good either of these teams will be coming to that game, but I'll tell you this right now: the the weaknesses of Georgia are at spots where they're important. I mean, you don't want your offensive line. I say weakness. Excuse me, Matt. I don't know if Georgia's weak so much as they don't know exactly what five guys are going to play. DB, that might be a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, I don't think Georgia's going to have one of the worst offensive lines in the conference. I still think it'll be one of the best. So they just have to figure out those kinks and figure out the puzzle. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and I think Matt Luke has been a head coach before. Yeah. He's one of the highest paid offensive line coaches in the country. I think there's a lot on him to get it right for them to have a really excellent offensive line. But I hope Keely Ringo is as good as when I saw him.
How good are we talking about?
He was a special kid. Again, it was tough because they didn't throw his way maybe twice, but he still made a handful of tackles, and they were struggling on offense. He came in for one play, and he zigzagged his way to a 55-yard touchdown, and that's when I saw the explosiveness and the burst and the athleticism because he made it look easy, just zigzagging through that defense on his way to an easy touchdown. And that's when I said, this kid could catch some passes in Athens if they really need him to. If they're that thin at running back for some reason, they could give Keely Ringo the ball. He's going to make some plays. But the size, he's like 6'2", 200 pounds, and he's one of the fastest kids on the team. So,
if he is a guy, how far does that take you down the line? I mean, if he's as good as Eric Stokes was,
then this defense could be the best in the country. I think it's already one of the best, but if Keely Ringo steps in and is the 5-star that people thought he'd be, and he's healthy, and he shows the ability to cover and in one-on-one situations, it's going to make Georgia that much tougher because we just talked about the front seven. And if teams are going to score on Georgia, I think it's going to be a lot like last year where you throw up some balls deep down the field, have your guy make a play, and if they're not, offenses aren't allowed to do that, then yeah, it's going to be really, really hard to score on Georgia because it's not a team you can nickel and dime down the field unless they're in prevent defense situation and kind of let you do that down the field. So if you can't throw and make big plays on this Georgia secondary, it's going to be really tough to beat them. And I think Ringo has the speed and Jalen Kimber has the length to stay with guys on the outside too. So the potential is there. They just need the spring to develop and become those type of players.
Let's talk about the spring more over on dawgpost.com, DAWGPOST.com. We'll see you over on the website.